Right then. Well, since everybody is set and everything's going and we know what we're doing, let's get into it. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, you know who it is, and we are in for a special treat because there are not a whole lot of, at least from what I saw, a whole lot of conversations and interviews with our next guest, especially sort of live in the moment right now as we are having it. We have one Miss Kristen Hayter here.
Hi.
Singer and composer, multi-instrumentalist, a performance artist, you could say as well, aka Lingua Ignota. And she has taken the time during this quarantine to talk to us about herself, her music, and everything in between. We will later be taking fan questions from you guys. Luis, make sure that makes it into the Twitch look at me thing, or you specify where exactly I need to find that later so I can get to those questions, because I'm confused as to where that's going to be right now. Not being very professional, but still I need to make sure of that. But we will be taking questions from you guys later, so make sure to submit those, throw those in the chat, or follow Swar's directions in the chat, however you need to be submitting those questions so that we can get to them. All right, let's get into my questions, because that's what I'm going to do first. To kick things off, how has your quarantine been, and like what is your physical and mental state currently? I know that you recently underwent a surgery, and sort of what's that been like, and how's your recovery going?
Current mental state is, I wish I was dead, but it's fine. I think we all do right now. Quarantine has been really intense. I think it's been intense for a lot of people, for everyone. I fucking hate how this word has been like so overused, but it is like unprecedented shit, and like civil unrest everywhere. And so I think everyone is trying their hardest to like keep it together. And I'm trying to do the same, might be losing it a little bit. But yeah, at the moment, I'm here in San Diego at my parents' house. I just underwent spinal surgery 2 weeks ago, or a little bit less than 2 weeks ago. And so I'm here having gotten the surgery, and then doing kind of my preliminary recovery here. So, otherwise I've been living in Philadelphia, and kind of part of my quarantine has been going around to different parts of Pennsylvania, which I find to be just an intrinsically creepy state, and kind of exploring and seeing what there is. So that's been a lot of it, just like a lot of strange, abandoned, like American ruins of Pennsylvania, and like otherwise living in Philly. So, and then surgery and pain. But yeah, it's been a time for sure.
Yeah, in that section of the country, there are a lot of just old towns, ghost towns, and America's considerably bloody history. I mean, you're talking about some really old, weird, creepy shit.
Yeah, I think I was talking to my friend Mike Berdan about this as well, who's from Pennsylvania, and from like the outskirts of Philly. And he was telling me some more kind of like lore about the state and about like the weird shit that's gone on there. But for me, it's like I find the energy really strange and like very disparate. I think there's a lot of like, there's like the Amish, and there's a lot of like, there's strong like elements of different cultures, and like strong progressive culture in Philly. And then like elsewhere in the state, there's like extreme like Trump energy and like militia style fucking white weird bullshit. And it's just like it's so strange, and everything is like kind of rustic and dusty and eerie. So yeah, I don't know. It's been interesting kind of learning about it and trying to like for I think about a month, we were wandering around in York, or like an enclave of York, Pennsylvania, which is kind of like middle of the state a little bit, and didn't realize until like you know until we knew that we were like directly across from 3 Mile Island, which is the site of like the largest nuclear disaster in the United States. And it's just like in this really bleak, dismal town with maybe like 700 people in it, and then just like across the way these giant nuclear reactors, and it's just like so bizarre and strange. But yeah, so it's been interesting.
Okay. To get into your music, because as much attention as you've been getting off of this latest record of yours, it's just your second record under this name.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's still like a lot of your background that hasn't necessarily been covered as extensively as I would like personally, because it's like you just kind of burst out of nowhere onto the Bandcamp scene, with your debut, at least from the view of a lot of people. And I mean, from my understanding, you have like some classical background and training. Like, can you give us some information about that and sort of like where your early years in music kind of begin? Like, what is the genesis for a lot of this stuff?
Yeah, sure. My early development in music comes at first from singing in church and from being a part of parochial school in Catholicism, and growing up in that environment, and discovering that I had like an aptitude for singing when I was pretty young, and then moving into classical voice and the music of like sacred music and classical music vocally are oftentimes intertwined or very similar. So it's not too difficult to get from one to the other, in the Western canon at least. So I think around age 10 or 11, I started doing classical voice and classical piano, and never got very good at piano, but the voice I did do pretty well at. And so I studied very rigorously up through high school, intending to go to conservatory and do operatic performance as a soprano. And then I just decided to go to art school instead. And so went to SAIC, the School of Air Institute of Chicago, and did like a weird multidisciplinary practice there that did incorporate the voice, but also incorporated different elements of the things that I learned about there, which was like performance art and film and like language, text, and then like creating sound in a different way, like more kind of avant-garde or academic sound art stuff.
At this point in your youth, when you were taking part in more faith-based music and sort of studying that further, was this something that you had involved yourself in out of a passion? It was just a culture that you were raised in, or did you see personally for yourself a future in this at this point? Or
for regarding like the Catholicism and religious music, no, I didn't. At the time, I was very much like both my parents are Catholic, and so I was raised that way. And I think that when I got to be a certain age, I did kind of question the validity of the idea of God, and I became when I was an early adolescent, I just became an atheist, and I was like, I don't believe in this shit. And so at that point, it felt forced for me to try to continue to go to church or to sing in church and to be part of that. So yeah, I definitely like moved pretty far away from sacred music and just went towards like secular operatic stuff at that point.
Mm-hmm. And as you were kind of transitioning into, as you were saying, going into art school, did this realization or this change in faith or ideology, did this coincide with a musical awakening as well? When you transitioned into this school, did you start to explore different sounds and ideas then, or were there other artists that you were listening to around this time that were kind of pushing you in that direction anyway? Yeah,
there were actually. I think kind of my first it might be like kind of cliche, but my first like experience with alternative music, I was like 11 years old, and my older cousin had left a cassette of Nirvana's Nevermind at our house, and I listened to it, and I was just I'd never heard anything like it before. My dad is really into like classic rock stuff, like the Beatles and Zeppelin and stuff, and is himself like a very gifted musician. So I did grow up around like rock music, but I'd never heard anything that seemed to be like as immediate as that. And so that was kind of like my gateway into alternative. And then from there got into like industrial music. And so I think that was maybe around age 10 or 11 also. And yeah, as I moved into more kind of alternative culture, I started to question the things that I had grown up with, and like became a goth and an atheist, and that was it. So yeah.
And you know, but to detour for 1 second, how do you feel is like, you know, I'm not trying to like date you or anything, you know, like age wise, but like, you know, how do you feel like in this millennium, like, you know, it aging into gothhood, you know what I mean? It's like, how do you feel like you maintain that goth energy while kind of like, you know, we a lot of us had that phase where like that Hot Topic mall goth, where it's like, it's sloppy and it's trashy and there's a lot of bright colors and there's bad makeup application, but how do you maintain that energy as you age without, you know, sort of like, without totally giving it up, and kind of like, you know, like the graceful goth transition where it's like, you're still a goth, but you're not the trashy teenage goth.
I don't know if there is a graceful transition. I think it's always oh my god. I feel like as you age into like more adult goth, you go in like a couple directions. You go in like there's maybe like a sketchier direction you can go that's like slightly like NSBM style goth, maybe, that
there's definitely a sketchier direction.
Yeah, we don't want to go there ever again. And then there's maybe like then there's like I don't know, would aging gracefully goth, would that be like BDSM style, like kink goth?
Well,
that seems like a development, or like the next phase of like Hot Topic goth. Oh my god, I'm gonna get in trouble.
Well, all I'm saying is that I've seen because I watch in my downtime, because I don't want to have to process anything thoughtful outside of my work hours. You know, I watch really terrible, like trashy reality TV with my significant other. And,
me too.
You know, we'll watch like some wife swap, and there'll be a goth couple where they're like, they're pushing 40 and they're still wearing the raver pants, and, you know, they're still like, and you go in their house and like, instead of like live, laugh, love posters, there's like pentagrams everywhere. And it's kind of like, you know, you're trying a little too hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's definitely that, and like the colorful dreadlocks, maybe.
Yeah, a little bit of that too.
Yeah. It's hard to age. Oh, you know what? I feel like maybe like the health goth, maybe that's like the chic, the chic development of goth.
Is that a genre?
It's like you're healthy and you're goth.
Got it.
You like to do yoga and like do, you know, maybe do CrossFit, but you have a lot of tattoos.
Okay.
And you listen to like, I don't know, what's graceful goth music that's like, I don't, you know, I'm not going to go there, honestly. I'm scared. But yeah, I feel like maybe health,
you know, whatever's coming out on Southern Lord, you're probably listening to that, you know,
possibly. Yeah. Possibly.
You're still keeping up with the Southern Lord catalog.
Yeah.
But
you maybe you invest in like a lot of Rick Owens and like some like apocalyptic like apocalyptic, like desert style goth. Yeah, there you go. I think that's the ticket. that's where you go.
Yeah, and if you're a guy, you're probably into some craft beers and shit and that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
you've definitely got a craft beer issue.
Yeah, you have a, it's a problem. It's a craft beer problem. Um, so the last thing I want to ask about your musical aesthetic is while the combination or the collision of classical music and industrial music isn't completely unprecedented.
Yeah.
It is rare. It is unlikely, and you do create that crossroads in a very unique way. Could you talk a little bit about how exactly you sort of made that transition over into music that is overtly noisy and aggressive and industrial while still maintaining those operatic and those classical elements to the point where they're clearly coexisting in a way that complement each other? Right.
I mean, for me, I don't really think about it in terms of establishing like a genre or looking at like, oh, I want to take elements of classical music and industrial music. And I really, at this point, I don't know that there's that much that's industrial in my music at all. But I think that I became really fond of like harsh noise and power electronics when I was in college, and I started going to shows in Chicago and watching noise artists and stuff. And I was really into that and started to think about like how to create that, and then also being into the academic side of that, of like musique concrète and acousmatic music and electroacoustic stuff. And so I think I was interested in creating like a specific, not a genre so much, but like a specific sound world that took all of the things that I thought were powerful about different genres and taking like a kind of postmodern approach and appropriating all these different things that were part of things that I like, that were part of black metal, that were part of power violence and power electronics and Bulgarian folk music and classical music and like Baroque music and medieval music, and taking all of that stuff and seeing like how I could put that together or use like the devices from those genres to make something that didn't sound like anything else, that sounded exactly how I wanted it to sound, to kind of convey the message of the music, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear you say that you weren't exactly consciously going about it in a genre organization type of way, because you distill a lot of interesting elements from heavier and more extreme music without necessarily creating those genres in a really obvious or overt way. You're not making black metal music. You're not making doom metal music. You're not, as you just said, even with your latest record, there's a lot of tracks that aren't even really even vaguely industrial. And yet, like, metalheads are massively into your shit. Like, you are on a metal label, and, just like the metal community at large just has a huge appreciation for what you do, despite it not being what you would typically hear being written up on a metal blog or whatever. So, there's definitely something about what you're doing aesthetically, musically, sonically, that is bringing people those same vibes without, doing some tremolo pick guitars and wretched screams and lo-fi production and blast beats. Yeah, we do. It's funny because Seth Manchester and I, who work together, Seth is the amazing engineer and producer at Machines with Magnets. We do have like a lot of like little jokes that we like to put into the music, and we both have very similar interests in like new composition and like very strange music. But we also know a lot about metal and that kind of stuff. So like on Caligula, we did have him do tremolo guitar, just because we were like, hey, this on Spite Alone, I made Seth play tremolo guitar just so that it would have like the black metal aspect,
and be kind of like an inside joke between us. And like, you know, the last single I put out, A Ruthless Great Divine Director, has, you know, blast beats that come in at the end and stuff that are done by Greg Fox. And so I do enjoy kind of like taking those pieces of you know, those genres and kind of inserting them in a way that's like unexpected and to me sometimes is like kind of funny and fun to do.
Let me ask you some questions about another, I think, a vital element of what you do, which unfortunately is not going to be a thing until this pandemic is over, but your performances, which there are a lot of very provocative and interesting videos of online.
Right.
Can you go about sort of explaining what it is that makes a Lingua Ignota performance special? Because, you know, you're not just simply performing on a stage separated totally from everybody else, at least in a lot of the clips that I've seen. I'm sure there will be performances like that at some point. But you know, a lot of what I'm seeing, people are close, they're huddled around, you're weaving in and out of the crowd. It's quite physical. Sometimes it even borders on self-abusive, and you will go on social media afterwards. There will be pictures of the bruises, which it seems like you're almost wearing as like badges of honor in, you know, post-performance. Like, you know, what exactly is going through your mind when doing these performances, and what do these things represent for yourself, and what do you hope the audience is taking away from them?
Right. When due to my background and kind of thinking about performance in terms of performance art, and not really thinking of myself as a band or as like as like even really just a musician, and thinking of myself more in like interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary terms, I didn't want to take the same approach to presenting the music. And because I feel like the music is kind of like unique or strange, I wanted the performance to reflect that as well, and to be more experiential and more kind of more immediate than me just standing in front of people and delivering the songs from a stage with like the same lights that everyone else uses and the same kinds of stuff. So for me, and it was kind of a process to get there, because I did feel at first that I had to do things the way that everyone else did. And being in kind of like the DIY scene in Providence while I was in grad school, I got to see people do, you know, lots of different things with their work and do different kinds of performance, and some of which was based on performance art as well. So I think I took kind of my background and wanted to, you know, think about like, particularly think about like the room differently, think about like the space that we're all occupying at the same time when a performance happens, and like what does a performance mean in like a very kind of meta way. And so just rearranging the room so that it's disorienting for people, and so that, you know, people feel kind of destabilized and uncomfortable, and then, you know, me being what I am and being kind of like needing to be very like autonomous with the work, and like it all being self kind of created, needing to like direct the lighting myself and be in control of it myself, being in control of like the stage and the set, and as much as I can, like being in control while also creating situations that are indeterminate or where I don't know what's going to happen, so that each performance is like totally unique. So there's this whole thing of like, I have all of these lights, utility lights that I kind of turn it off and on throughout the performance and drag around with me and like flail around with them, or light different parts of the room, light myself, light the audience. And you know, part of that is that I end up getting like very entangled in what might be like a 40 or 60 foot chord, and then like seeing what I have to do to continue to perform while also undoing the mess that I've made throughout the performance. So it's always like creating conflict for myself and for everyone else, and then trying to undo it. It's like this weird kind of cycle, and it is supposed to kind of mirror the cycle of abuse and to mirror kind of trauma, and like to create kind of vicarious trauma. So so a lot of it is like, you know, it's a bit dissociative for me, and I, you know, do end up kind of hurting myself, and I've actually like very much hurt myself. And in Europe last year, I gave myself a concussion accidentally, and so that might need to change, or like the way that I do things might need to change so that performance for me can be sustainable. But it's been, I really like just, you know, playing with the room and playing with people in the room. And like, I think one of the most exciting things for me is that I get to, you know, I get to light people, and I get to see how they're responding. And the show is kind of as much about everyone else as it is about me.
Yeah, I mean, I might have even told you this before. Like, I just I'm very intimately aware with, or just familiar with the with these clamp lamps, because I'm literally using them to light my videos on a regular basis. So you've made me see these in a whole new light, because I'm, you know, this is no longer just an ordinary clamp lamp for me.
I go through like thousands and thousands of dollars of those fucking clamp lamps.
But they're so cheap. How could you not? They're so cheap.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. Oh God, it gets so obnoxious. Those fucking things. Anyway,
whatever the company is, you're just keeping them afloat right now. Like,
yeah, I need a sponsorship. I need that.
Honestly, you do.
Yeah.
You know,
guys, I need that money. I need that clamp lamp cheez-it money.
Don't spoil later questions in the interview by bringing up the cheez-its, okay?
Okay.
So, you know, just a final question on this. You know, it is kind of like, it is kind of a freaky, scary thing. You know, have you ever been in a situation where a bulb breaks on you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And what,
I've been.
And what is that like?
Electrocuted more times than I can count.
Okay, wow.
I've had, you know, bulbs break like on my head. They are I used to do shows where I would just end up breaking everything at the end. Sometimes intentionally, and sometimes there have been quite a few shows where I just like, I go so hard that all of the lights break within like 10 minutes, and I have to perform for like 30 minutes in complete darkness.
Of course.
And that's kind of fun sometimes, but that's part of the indeterminacy. You never know. But it's like, yeah, it's been those fucking lights. Yeah, they do break and have injured me. But it's all part of the art. It's all part of the practice.
You make Gigi Allen sound like a pussy. Honestly, if we're being frank here.
That, but I appreciate that.
You touched down on some of the themes in your music while discussing, you know, the performance art side of what you do, especially with your latest record. Obviously, there's a huge narrative dealing with abuse in that album. And I mean, you're so upfront with it and so bold about it. I don't know how much about that you really need to go over at this point, but is there a part of you that wonders and worries? Because there have been other songwriters who have been kind of caught in this dilemma, but is there ever a part of you that wonders about, am I putting too much of myself in my music? Am I giving away too much of myself? Am I letting people like too far in with what I'm telling them with what I'm doing? Yeah, there is a good chunk of me that would favor caution and would say, you know, let, you know, that I should turn away from this. But I am sort of a person who tends to put my entire self into a thing or into other people. I tend to put all of my energy into others, oddly. And so I think that for me, doing the work that I have done has been
a really important part of my personal healing and my personal growth through these experiences. And knowing that they have resonated with and helped other people has been probably the most rewarding aspect of making music for me. So I ultimately don't regret it. Maybe someday I will, but at this point, I feel really grateful for the way that people have received my music and my experience. And I've gotten, like some cruelty, but like much less than I would think I would get for what I'm doing. So ultimately, like I would, I'm glad that I kind of was not cautious, and that I have been forward about this stuff, so that it's because it's been helpful for me, and I think other people too.
Mm-hmm. And are these themes and sort of ideas that you feel like you'll further be exploring on your upcoming records, or do you feel like you'll be moving on to other experiences or pulling from other pieces of inspiration in your life? I mean, you were just talking about kind of your surroundings in Philadelphia and everything. I mean, that could be one thing, or I mean, you tell me.
I think that there's going to be the next one that I'm working on is different than the previous few. And I think that I'll explore those themes as long as they feel urgent and as long as they feel authentic. And when they no longer do, it would be wrong to continue to explore them. And I think there will be elements of other things that make their way into the music as well. And kind of what I'm hoping to do is just like somewhat like building, like world building kind of like a mythology of what the music is, and different elements that will appear and then disappear and reappear throughout the course of throughout the trajectory of the work, I guess. So I think, I mean, as long as it feels right to do and urgent and like it still needs to be done, I'll do it. But other than that, I would, I would not want to make work about abuse if abuse is not a thing that I am working out in myself or experiencing currently. So
it's interesting that you talk about your upcoming works continuing to build a kind of mythos, and there certainly is like a mystique to you if we're simply just kind of looking at the musical end of things. But in a way, you do also kind of break that down in a very knowing way, and in a way that I think fans appreciate when you do something like a Jolene cover, because it's like everything that you're doing is coming from a totally different world, but then what you're doing here with this is like coming from a place that we're all very much familiar with, and you do it in your own way. But and clearly you were talking earlier about being in a Nirvana when you were younger, like many of us have been. But, are there any other songwriters or songs that mean a lot to you currently in this day and age that come from that much more familiar world for all of us, like a Dolly Parton, or I don't know, just throwing names out there, like an Elliott Smith or whatever?
Right. I mean, for me, the covers don't really come from identifying with the artist really. I choose the covers mostly based on like how I can flip their content into something bizarre and like that fits with my praxis kind of. I do a cover of Eminem's Kim. I do a cover of like Total War by Non. That's set to like Schubert's Ave Maria kind of. I do
As You Do.
Foreigner. Yeah. I do Foreigners, I Want to Know What Love Is. And so it's just like like kind of recontextualizing things and put in things that, might mean something totally different in another zone, but mean something, again, totally different in my zone. So as far as like songwriters who mean a lot to me currently, I mean, I don't know that I would mine from that necessarily, for my own stuff. I think that I mine intentionally from like and plunder and appropriate from stuff that is kind of like not meaningful to me, sort of.
Oh, it doesn't need to be for, musical purposes. It can just be a
Oh
personal
yeah.
thing.
I mean, I love Serpent with Feet at the moment.
Okay.
And I love their like prowess over lyrics and prowess over these like beautiful gliding lines. And then again, like the elements of like classical music that come with like a really strange and beautiful production. I just think that, I just think that they're a total genius. So that's somebody who I listen to a lot. I've been listening to a lot of More Mother lately.
Yes.
And all of her projects are insane and amazing. And that More Jewelry record that just came out is like bananas and like so fucking punk. It's probably the most punk thing that I've heard in like a pretty long time. So, and I think her way with text and with storytelling is really incredible too. So those are a couple people that I find really inspiring at the moment.
One thing I wanted to ask you, because I get a lot of questions about this myself, like I have any advice on this really when I don't, honestly, but obviously people throw me their demos and their tracks all the time, or they will just like ask me, how do I get my music out there? What do? I want people to hear it. And usually when I am answering those questions, I am giving them advice, assuming they're making poppy, catchy, commercial music. Hey, don't worry about making an album until you can make a 3-minute single people actually care about.
Right.
But you yourself have achieved a level of success that people are fighting for every day, but you're doing it making such unconventional music. You're not going down this path where you're trying to hit people with the most conventional or commercial sounding single on the block. And, like, what would you say is that process of, once you do have this beast or monster of a song that the sound of it is going to turn off any normie or anybody who's also not aging gracefully into goth. How exactly are you kind of putting out what you're doing so it's connecting with that audience, whether it be on Bandcamp or any other platform?
At first it was very much like I didn't think that anyone would ever hear my music or that anyone would care. And I really just kind of did it and put it in the world because I was like, man, I've played some shows in Providence and like, I'll just put it up there and it'll be free and like nobody has it. And I think, one of the major turning points for me was like, was that the Body, the band, became like kind of champions of my work and that they were, telling people to listen to it and that we became friends and I started to tour with them. And I think that's also where a lot of like the attention from the metal community came from because they were like very much supporters of me and they took me out when, why would they take me out? I was like, nobody knew who I was. And so, at this point, I think, in those kind of early stages, that was, what did it. And then strangely, like things just happened via like word of mouth and people started listening. And a lot of times like, I'll promote a band or that I think is really cool and like nothing will happen. But for some reason, like the Body promoted my stuff and like it kind of moved on its own. And so from there I get, I get like the label and I get, and now I have, the reach where I was able to work with Sargent House and they kind of, have been like extremely helpful putting me in like the right places and stuff. So, I'm really lucky to have Kathy managing me and making sure that I'm zooming in the right directions, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the experimental and extreme music scene, it kind of has had a history of just having a lot of DIY roots, and there is a lot of kind of internal support and spreading around of whatever music is kind of special to those who are operating within it. And obviously that support that you're talking about comes full circle with the Sightless Pit collaboration that you just did as well. Are there any other collaborations that you have coming down the pipe or that you'd be interested in pursuing past this point?
I think there are a few collaborations that I'm really excited about that I can't speak of yet, but that I'm very excited about pursuing. But I think I did the Sightless Pit with Dylan and Lee from Full of Hell and The Body, who are my good friends, and I love them very much. And that was a really fun record to do. And who knows if we'll do another one, maybe. But the next one that's coming up is the Alexis Marshall record, the solo one that's going to be on Sargent House. And that one is bananas. It is crazy. I think you're going to be really excited about it.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people are going to be like super psyched on it. It's just so crazy. So I got to work on that, and Seth and I, again, we worked with, Lex wanted to have some people around him who he knew well and knew would make do fantastic and like interesting things. So he enlisted John from Daughters, who does like such a sick job on drums, and Evan Patterson from J Jail, who does amazing work on guitar and kind of like the different stringed instruments. And then Seth did a lot of really, really amazing work on this record. And then, and Seth and I like kind of like co-produced it. And I did a lot of like noisy stuff and some vocals, and Lex did some noisy stuff and did like these really crazy vocals. So it's quite a ride. And so I'm really excited for that one to come out and for people to hear it. And other than that, I'm working on my new one, but I think I'm going to contact some people I've been hoping to collaborate with for a while now, and kind of make that stuff happen while we're all kind of locked down.
Okay. I'm going to take a few questions from everybody who's been sort of throwing them in the chat and everything. Before I throw the first one at you, do you want to take a moment, and given what I have kind of gleaned from you over social media, you have a serious passion for Cheez-Its.
I do.
Would you like to use this platform as a pitch for your Cheez-It sponsorship, which I know that you have been vying for? However many more places you can put it is probably best. Who knows? Post this, you could end up on the front of the box. So yeah. Make it good.
Yes. Dear Cheez-Its, please start giving me free Cheez-Its. I think I single-handedly keep you motherfuckers in business. And I only want extra toasty. Please don't give me anything else. I don't want original. I don't want white cheddar. I don't want fucking spicy whatever bullshit. I don't want duos. I don't want snapped. That shit is garbage. I just want extra toasty. I want all of them that you can give me, which is all of them. And I don't understand why I have to keep producing fucking premium content for you, and I still don't get any fucking free Cheez-Its. They did this thing like last year, I think it was last year, that was like wine and Cheez-Its. It didn't make any goddamn sense. And you should divert marketing from that kind of shit towards me, because I will bring you the money. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, great. Awesome. Amazing. I'm sold. If I were working the Cheez-It social media team, guys, make sure that when this goes up on the Fantano channel, you're sending it to the Cheez-It social media team on Twitter, just so that they know. Okay, we're a community. We all need to be involved in this. Yeah. So the first question that I wanted to throw at you comes from Elaine. I think that's how you pronounce it. There's like a number in their name and everything. Do you feel like Caligula was an upgrade from All Bitches Die, or just a change in style? And how do you compare them looking back at both works?
I personally do feel like it's an upgrade, I guess. I don't know if I would describe it as such necessarily, but All Bitches Die was recorded in a very different state of mind. It was recorded kind of without really like any knowledge of what I was doing. And I did it all alone. Like I was living in a shed in Lincoln, Rhode Island at the time, and just like, alone in this like tiny little thing, and next to some chickens. And I don't know why that's relevant, but I think, it has like a kind of like slightly dirtier production quality, and like maybe it's a little bit more well, I know it has like a much dirtier production quality because I did it myself. And everything is like drenched in reverb, and there's a lot of, with All Bitches Die, like for me, one of the biggest changes is like there's a lot of like space, and it's very like the room feels like very big because there's a lot of reverb. Everything is kind of like drenched and very wet. And then with Caligula, particularly, Seth had to convince me to take all the fucking reverb off of everything. And I was so attached to it because I was, insecure about my voice sounding ugly and things sounding ugly. So for me, like conceptually, I feel like Caligula is an upgrade because it was very much like planned out, very much structured in a way that was like very careful. All of like the motifs and the light motifs and all that stuff was like very, very carefully thought out. And I do feel like, the production and everything was like vastly improved because I got to work with, Seth, who was really helping me to push the envelope and challenge myself as far as what I was comfortable with things sounding like. So, yeah.
Next question comes from, I think their name is pronounced Uncle Peevers.
Oh, great. Hi, Uncle Peevers.
They're asking, what's your take generally on the political vision of extreme metal or extreme music, which, depending on who you're listening to, tends to slant very far right or very far left? You're talking about in some pockets of these genres there being neo-Nazism. I guess what's your take on this generally? And for me personally, do you feel like, because obviously your music comes from a place that is not that, and your social media presence as well, do you feel like there is a way or ways to kind of wedge that into the scene and sort of make that function and not necessarily coexist, but maybe even take over or advance in some kind of way?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge to kind of navigate that scene, and it's there are like a lot of differing ideologies, and there's like there's some very extreme like right wing bullshit that I abhor, and I think a lot of people are like kind of in the middle. I think there's like a wide kind of swath of metal that's really into the extreme content as like cool cultural cipher and doesn't necessarily identify with the politics of gore grind or, racist black metal, but they're like, oh, like this is edgy and cool, it's fine. And then I think there's like a totally different side, which is like the radical left. And I think that side is like a little smaller, but is very protective of their own and like very vocal about like the other side, being pieces of shit, which is understandable. And so I think for me, my particular approach was one of infiltration and like getting in kind of like the middle and forcing people to contend with me. And there were a lot of times that was extremely uncomfortable. I mean, I remember a time where I was playing a metal fest in Denmark, and I had no idea that a kind of like notorious shitty band was playing like shitty politics until I was like there and about to play. And I was like, okay, do I play this fest or do I not play this fest and like say like fuck this band? And I decided to, this might be a controversial thing, but I decided to play because I wanted that fucking audience to sit there and watch me and be like, and to have to deal with me. And I don't give a fuck if they're like making fun of me or they think it's like, oh, it's like it's a girl like jumping around, you know, fuck you, I'm here, and like I'm gonna take up the space that would otherwise be utilized by these, you know, by some fucking like neo-Nazi shithead. But I do think it is now time for people to like in the metal scene to like take a stand and be like, you know, this is not okay, and we won't tolerate it anymore. So yeah, it's very it's complex, but it's also like not complex at the same time at this point, you know.
Sure. Next, Mike Zucchini is asking, what was your process for learning how to scream? And do you have any entry-level advice for someone who wants to learn to scream musically?
That's a tough one because I am not a proper metal screamer. I'm like an actual screamer. It's like there's with metal vocalists a lot of times there's like there's a process of like very specific control of the breath and very specific control of the sound being emitted so that there's like a harmony and a balance, and I don't do that, and so I lose my voice constantly when I scream, and my speaking voice when I'm on tour will get like 2 octaves lower. And but I think there are a couple vocal teachers who work with metal vocals in particular. I haven't worked with any, but there's a woman named like Melissa Cross who supposedly does like really good work with teaching you how to do metal vocals. It kind of like depends on what kind you want to do. If you want to do like the high shrieky black metal style, which is like kind of my favorite, it's harder to find material that will help you learn how to do that. For me, it was just like, you know, I'm just going to scream in my shed and like hope that it makes the sound that I want. And it is kind of like, I think it is a weird and unique sound that I create sometimes maybe, but yeah, just kind of look around, watch YouTube tutorials. Like they're so dumb, but they can help. Yeah.
I think this next question is connected, considering what you were just saying about your voice and also the brutal and kind of physical nature of the performances that you undergo. Like, what is your routine, or what are some of the things that you do on a regular basis? Maybe you're just kind of in the process of learning this and figuring this out to kind of maintain yourself mentally and physically without basically like burying yourself into the ground just to be a musician and be a performer.
Yeah, I'm not good at that.
Yeah. So again, you're still kind of figuring it out. I'm
really not good at that. It's something, again, like when touring becomes possible, God knows when that will be. I really am kind of like taking this time right now to make sure that I become healthy physically and mentally, because I have not been able to do it. I have gone on tour and like gotten a fucking concussion and not been able to finish the tour and like not been able to play shows, and then everyone's like mad at me, and I'm like, I'm really sorry, but like I can't stand up or look at any lights or anything like that. And so for me, it is an issue of like, I fucking hate this term, but like self-care. I have to learn how to take care of myself and be compassionate with myself. I am not that way naturally, so it's like a really shitty rewiring process that I have to do. But it's like, yeah, I am very, very tough on my body. And I'm like, okay, like we're going to, especially for the headlining tour that I did, you know, this last fall, I thought like the shows were like twice as long as they were for my, for any opening sets that I've been playing, which was, you know, typical before then. And it was like, it was so much harder, and it was harder to play the Caligula stuff and sing it. And like the order that I was singing stuff in, like a third of the way through, I'd be just exhausted every show. But it's a matter of just like pushing through, and then like, okay, then you push through again. And I'm so bad at that. Nobody should ever come to me for advice about like, how do you stay healthy? I'm like, I don't know. I fucking suck at that. So I apologize, but I don't have a good answer to that question.
I think your body's just probably mending itself together off of pure adrenaline at this point.
Yeah.
Your father was a horse's ass is curious about the significance behind the Caligula Tattoo? Because obviously visually it's played kind of a big role in kind of the presentation of this new record and everything.
I was just talking about this with my friend CP the other day. We were talking about, because they want to get like a large tattoo and they don't have any other tattoos really. But I saw a post. I kind of like love the shit posting that people do about me. I think some of it's like really hilarious. I do have like a sense of humor about most of it. And I saw one that said it was like hashtag dad's first tattoo. And I thought that was so funny. But the significance of it was to take, like, it's in a particular font that like a particular hardcore band uses.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to have like very masculine energy and to be like kind of like a male flexing thing. Just be like this big kind of like dumb, kind of like legitimately dumb tattoo. But also to be something that showed that I was like completely committed to the music and that I am completely committed to this project as like an extension of my life. And it became like it became a thing that I thought about doing. I was like, oh, should I do this and make like, because my body is already so much a part of the work, as an object and as a subject. And so I was like, oh, do I want to do this? And then it just became like, I just had to do it. There was nothing else. There was no other way. I just had to. And so I went to my friend, Stacy Lynn, and she did it for me in a few hours. And, you know, there it is. It's there forever. I must live with it. So I'm glad people like the record. It could have gone really badly.
That is true. If the record went really badly, that would be a huge regret now, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful that it panned out the way that it did then.
Yeah.
This next question is from Hosnap.
Who are these people?
I don't know. This person says, this is a good question though.
Okay.
In your creative process, when you're writing a song, writing a piece, is structure super significant to you, or is it more of the vibe and the flow and the pace of the way everything is going that is more significant? Are you thinking more in terms of like, this part needs to happen and this part needs to happen and this part needs to happen, or is it like kind of like more of a slow, organic, natural progression to wherever the vague idea in your head is that you're headed?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think in terms of like of the narrative of what the piece needs to do, I typically put lyrics and text together first. And that's always been kind of the foundation of my practice, is like text is at the bottom of everything. And so then I take kind of what I want the text to be doing at any given time. And I'll think about what kind of soundscape would work over this text, what would work in counterpoint to it, like kind of going over different options of like what I think would be an interesting contrast or an interesting like commingling, and then kind of building the piece up from there. Like, you know, this part should be like really soft and sweet, and this part should be like loud and abrasive, and this part should be like a weird polyphonic chanting thing. So I think. And then I have to make sure that it makes sense in context of like the larger narrative of like, if it's a record, for instance, like how does making everything in this kind of like syntagmatic way fit into like the broader piece as a whole, and how does that affect like the flow and the organicness, because I do want it to have a feeling of like, oh, this is moving in this particular way, and then all of a sudden it's not, and then it's moving this way, and then all of a sudden it's not. So kind of trying to create, I think it is very like very kind of like pastiche and like small elements, but it needs to like have an overarching like vibe.
Jin Hyung Kim asks, could you explain your MFA thesis in detail? Based on what I've read on Wikipedia, it sounds like it pertains pretty deeply to your work in Lingua Ignota.
Yeah, I am working on making this available publicly somehow, because it is such like a large and stupid thing that I'm trying to figure out like the best way to present it. But the thesis is called "Burn Everything, Trust No One, Kill Yourself," and it takes misogynist media. It takes like a lot of stuff from misogynist media of particularly extreme metal and like extreme music, like noise and black metal, and like I particularly went into porno grind and like went into like meat shits and stuff and like took all of their lyrics, took like liner notes, took message board posts, took like all of this stuff and compiled it, and then put it through an algorithm, a procedural text model called a Markov chain, and generated 10,000 pages of text. So it has like a speaker, and it has, it has kind of recurring language, but it's just garbage. Ultimately, it's like garbage content, and it's garbage in that it's just like, it's nothing. It doesn't need to exist, and yet it exists. And I think I was looking at like other conceptual writing models, like the writer Kenneth Goldsmith, and other like male writers who write giant texts, who make like texts that are like 1,000 pages long, or like, that stuff is typically, relegated to men. And then women are the short story writers, or women are like the novelists. And I'm like, no, I'm going to make this fucking like the biggest piece of text you've ever seen. And so then it was an installation where I just like put all the text into space. And it was a video that also, the other component of it was that it related to and was like I'll start over somewhat. So, and the text became music, and the music is related to and indebted to The Rite of Spring by Igor Stravinsky, which is kind of considered to be like the most influential piece of music of the 20th century, but also deals with violence against women and women sacrificing themselves for the benefit, or like a woman dancing herself to death to benefit her community.
And also just the story of the first performance of that as well is insane.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The first performance, there were riots, and it was, I think the riots were particularly about Nijinsky's choreography and this like totally angular, modern interpretation of ballet. So it was just like, apparently just like a totally wild thing, and Stravinsky got like death threats and shit. But yeah, so taking like very low culture violence against women and like high end violence against women, and mixing them, and using again like kind of the imagery of extreme music, of like noise music, and like buildings collapsing, things on fire, and like the women dancing, and like all that stuff, and like kind of just radically recontextualizing that so that it would be about reframing all of that stuff, all of that kind of like meaningless genre signifier stuff, as real for survivors of violence, as something that you could use to weaponize yourself with, as like an expression of rage for people who don't see violence as a hobby or like as a cool, edgy thing, who have like experienced violence. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. It did not go over very well in academia because of the size of the thing. My thesis advisor was like, this appears to kind of condone violence, and it's 10,000 pages long. And like, how are we going to put this in the archive? And like, so I ended up just like snipping out like 100 pages, and it's in the archive at Brown somewhere. But yeah, that did inform like the first kind of iterations of my project, and like the very first EP that I put out, Let the Evil of His Own Lips Cover Him, is like part of that song cycle. that's indebted to the Rite of Spring. And eventually it'll come back in a meaningful way, but I just need to figure out the proper presentation for it. I'm sorry, that's a very long explanation, I feel, but
No, it was a good explanation, and I'm sorry for keeping you for so long, but you're so great at just answering all these questions, and you've just been a fantastic interview guest. I will try to not keep you for too much longer, but I am getting a lot of, continuing to get a lot of good and interesting submissions over here. Okay. I will cut this out if this ends up being an embarrassing moment, but do you have a sister named Carly?
Oh yeah. What is Carly here?
Carly is Carly is saying, "This is her sister Carly!" Exclamation point! Exclamation point!
I'm so excited you're here.
Ask her what her top albums are from pre-1990s! Exclamation points!
I don't even know how to answer that. Why would she make me answer that?
It's funny that you say that because she says she's always wanted someone to ask her this question.
I have not.
Or what are her favorite albums from pre-2000s or the 90s? She's always wanted someone to ask her this question.
What?
Is this an aspiration for an interview, or is this more of a person? Like, I just wish someone would ask me what my favorite albums are before the 2000s. I don't know what your sister is on. I don't know what your sister is on right now, but this is what your sister is saying. I believe this is what your sister is saying right now.
From when I was pre-2000s or when music was pre-2000s. Can you elucidate, Carly?
Answer to the best of your ability, I suppose.
Oh my God. This is hard for me because my memory is so shot from like years of taking Klonopin. Oh my God, Carly. I don't know.
we can move on. If
Carly's being a troll.
Maybe it's a troll. I don't know. Maybe it's a troll. Maybe someone knows that you have a sister named Carly. If so, hit her up afterwards and ask her what was up. And if she tells you, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, let me know, please. Let me know, please, because I don't know. Maybe it's just a liar who really just wanted to know your favorite albums before the 1990s. I think one of the last things I'll ask is what are just a few of your favorite contemporary noise artists, and also what is one thing you would like people to take away from your music?
Yeah. My favorite contemporary noise artists are probably the Rita Sam McKinley, who is also a dear and much loved friend, who's been like a big and very wonderful support system for me since I started, basically. And he's kind of one of the godfathers of harsh noise. And one of the really interesting things about Sam and his work is that, I personally feel that it's not that harsh noise most of the time is not so much about like each individual piece of noise or like, each individual work or like each individual like record or split, but that in particular, Sam's work tracks the trajectory of obsession, and it's really, really super interesting to just look at how that started and look at how he integrates kind of worshiping and then destroying his fetishes and obsessions using harsh noise. And he's also somebody with like a pretty strong fine arts and conceptual arts background. So he's really great. And I think that probably the best and most incredible noise, I don't even know if I would call them noise, but the greatest noise artists currently living today would be Pedestrian Deposit, which is John and Shannon, and they're based in LA, I believe. And they do just really incredible work and have this incredibly visceral and intense, like live performance in particular. And Shannon is a really amazing artist who creates like giant set pieces that she then amplifies. And like she's also a string player and like and a cellist, and she will create like out of like, you know, pieces of metal, she'll create like a giant like kind of hangman's noose or like any you know, multiple like big props or set pieces, and she'll just like, you know, slam into it with like a big piece of metal, and it will create like the most devastating noise. And you get to, it's one of the few live noise artists where you get to like see the object and then like see the note and hear what it sounds like. And it's really incredible and really intense to watch live. And I encourage everyone to check them out because they're awesome. And there's some really amazing, like newer and younger noise artists as well. Like I love Dream Crusher. They are incredible and also super intense live. I love Pain Chain, who's based in, I believe, Canada, and you know, she's really amazing. Moonbeam Terror is really amazing. There are a lot of kind of like new up and coming noise artists who I think are incredible. Yeah. Oh, and what was the
what's sort of one takeaway that you'd like people to sort of, you know, glean from your music as they listen to it, whether it's somebody who's enjoying it or just something that you feel like people aren't getting from it necessarily from even kind of a deeper listen or a read into it?
Right. I think what I want people to take away from the music, or one thing that I want, is for people to renegotiate their relationship to the power struggles that they've had in their lives. And like think about, like, remember who you are is something that I've been saying to myself over the past like bunch of months. And like remember your own power, and that you are capable of anything. And if I, who am just like, you know, I think of myself as kind of like a doofus who just, you know, happened to get lucky and like be here, you know, talking to you and, you know, doing all this cool stuff.
Oh, there's nothing special about talking to me. Stop.
But I think of myself as like, you know, not particularly special, but I get to be here. And that means that, you know, anyone else can do the same. And so, you know, I went from a place of being like having zero power and feeling completely powerless and feeling very weak and feeling very unsure of myself. And I know there are a lot of people who feel that way and who feel invisible and who feel unloved and who feel like they have nothing, they are nothing, they deserve nothing, and that's not fucking true. You do whatever you can to take your fucking power. And for me, I found it in the music. And, you know, I really treasure and appreciate and I'm grateful for that.
That's pretty heavy. And considering how shitty I've been feeling, I needed to hear that too. So, all right. Thank you very much. You have been a fantastic guest. You've been a wonderful guest. I think 10 out of 10 guest. So thank you very much. 10 out of 10 guest. And when you do another project in the future, we would love to have you back.
Thank you.
Chat says, Big True, damn, Godspeed, bye, Queen, clap, clap, 10, 10, 10. So they're appreciative of you coming through as well. Have a powwow with your sister. Let us know what the heck is up with her, or if someone just trolled the shit out of me. And you know, I will see you on the Instagram, hopefully at some point with that cheez-it sponsorship. So, you know, let us know the progress on that.
I will keep everyone apprised of the cheez-it sponsorship. And thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure.
All right, have a good one.
And yeah, have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.